You know that feeling when you walk into a room and everything just stops, like dead silence, everyone's eyes on you, and you can feel it in your gut that something terrible is about to happen. That's exactly what happened to me. And what came next? I promise you, you're gonna want to stick around for this one. Because what my own family did to me that night, and what I did back, changed everything. Forever. Let me take you back to the beginning. My name is Emma Collins. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a quiet little suburb just outside of Cleveland, Ohio. You know the type: nice houses, friendly neighbors, kids riding bikes on the sidewalk. The kind of place where everyone waves at each other and pretends everything is perfect. And for a long time I thought my life was perfect too. I'd been married to my husband James for 11 years. 11 years. We met in college, back when I was just a shy girl studying accounting, and he was the confident guy who made everyone laugh. He was charming, handsome, the kind of man who walked into a room and owned it. I fell for him hard. We got married when I was 23. Had our son Noah 2 years later. And for a while, everything was exactly how I dreamed it would be. James worked as a sales manager at a car dealership, and I worked my way up to become a senior accountant at a mid-sized firm downtown. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We had a nice house. Good life. Or so I thought. See, here's the thing about comfort. Makes you blind. You get so used to the routine, the same conversations, the same dinners, the same everything, that you stop paying attention. You stop noticing the little things. Like how James started working late more often. Or how he'd smile at his phone sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. Or how my younger sister Olivia, who I loved more than anything in this world, started coming over to our house a lot more frequently. Olivia was 29, 5 years younger than me. And she was everything I wasn't. Beautiful. Going. The life of every party. She had this way of lighting up a room that I always admired but could never replicate. Growing up, we were inseparable. I was the responsible one, the one who helped her with homework and covered for her when she snuck out to parties. And she was the fun one, the one who dragged me out of my shell and made me feel alive. I would have done anything for her. Anything. But I never, not in a million years, thought she would do what she did to me. It all started about 6 months before that terrible night. I got promoted at work. Senior Vice President of Financial Operations. It was a huge deal. Bigger salary, bigger responsibilities, and a lot more travel. First, James was supportive. He told me how proud he was, how I deserved it, how we'd make it work. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband, my partner, the man I'd spent over a decade building a life with. But the more I traveled, the more things started to change. I'd come home exhausted, and James would be distant, cold. He'd barely look at me during dinner. When I tried to talk to him about my day, he'd give one-word answers and go back to scrolling on his phone. I told myself it was just stress, that we were both busy, that marriages go through rough patches and we'd get through it like we always did. I was wrong. The first real sign something was off came about 3 months before everything fell apart. I came home early from a conference in Chicago. My flight got changed last minute, so I didn't tell anyone I was coming back a day early. I figured I'd surprise James and Noah. Maybe we'd order pizza and watch a movie together like we used to. But when I pulled into the driveway, I saw Olivia's car parked outside. Now that wasn't unusual. Olivia came over all the time. She was close with Noah, and James always said she was like family. But something felt different that day. Something I couldn't explain. I walked up to the front door and was about to open it when I heard laughter coming from inside. James's laugh. Deep and genuine. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard from him in months. And then I heard her, Olivia, giggling, saying something I couldn't quite make out. I stood there for a moment, my hand on the doorknob, my heart pounding in my chest. And then I shook it off. Told myself I was being paranoid. That my sister and my husband were just hanging out. That there was nothing wrong. Opened the door. They were in the kitchen. James was leaning against the counter. And Olivia was standing close to him. Too close. When they saw me, they both jumped back like they'd been caught doing something they shouldn't. Emma! Olivia said, her face flushing red. You're home early. Yeah, I said slowly, looking between them. Surprise. James cleared his throat and walked over to give me a quick hug. Felt stiff, forced. How was the conference? He asked, not meeting my eyes. Fine, I said. What's going on here? Nothing, Olivia said quickly. I just stopped by to drop off some cookies I made. You know, for Noah. I looked at the counter. There was a plate of cookies sitting there. Chocolate chip. Noah's favorite. That's sweet of you, I said, forcing a smile. But something didn't feel right. The way they jumped apart when I walked in. The nervous energy in the room. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd interrupted something. That night, after Olivia left and Noah went to bed, I tried to talk to James about it. Hey, I said, sitting down next to him on the couch. Is everything okay? You seemed weird earlier. I'm fine, he said, not looking up from the TV. James, come on. Talk to me. He sighed and finally turned to face me. Emma, I'm just tired, okay? Work has been crazy. I don't need an interrogation every time I have a bad day. His tone was sharp, defensive, and it made me feel like I was the one who'd done something wrong. I wasn't interrogating you, I said quietly. I was just asking. Well, don't, he snapped. Then he stood up and walked out of the room. I sat there alone, staring at the blank TV screen, feeling like a stranger in my own house. But I pushed it down, buried it, told myself I was overreacting. I wish I had trusted my gut. Over the next few weeks, things got worse. James became more distant. He'd leave the room whenever I came in. He'd take his phone calls outside. And every time I asked if something was wrong, he'd shut me down. And Olivia, she started acting weird too. She'd avoid my calls, cancel plans at the last minute. When we did talk, she seemed nervous, distracted. I told myself they were both just going through something, that it had nothing to do with me. But deep down I knew. I think I knew for a while. I just didn't want to believe it. The night everything changed was a Thursday. I'd been in Boston for a week, working on a massive audit for one of our biggest clients. It was exhausting work, but I was proud of what I'd accomplished. I was supposed to stay until Saturday, but I finished early. So I booked an earlier flight and headed home. I figured I'd surprise my family, spend some quality time with Noah, maybe finally have that conversation with James that we'd been avoiding for months. When my plane landed in Cleveland, it was around 7 in the evening. I grabbed my luggage, got an Uber and headed home. The whole drive I had this weird feeling in my stomach, like something was wrong. I tried to ignore it, told myself I was just tired from the trip. But when the car pulled onto my street, the feeling got stronger. There were cars everywhere, parked along the curb, in our driveway, on the lawn. I recognized them immediately. My dad's old pickup truck, my mom's silver sedan, my brother Michael's SUV, and Olivia's little red convertible. My heart started racing. What was going on? Was someone hurt? Did something happen to Noah? I practically threw money at the Uber driver and ran up to the front door. My hands were shaking as I fumbled with my keys. When I finally got the door open, I stepped inside. And everything stopped. The living room was full of people. My mom and dad were sitting on the couch, their faces serious. My brother Michael was standing by the fireplace, arms crossed. His wife Sarah was next to him, avoiding my eyes. And in the center of the room, standing side by side like they belonged together, were James and Olivia. Everyone turned to look at me. No one said a word. The silence was deafening. I looked around the room, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Why was everyone here? Why were they looking at me like that? And then my eyes landed on my son. Noah was sitting in the corner, his arms wrapped around himself. He was 9 years old, but in that moment he looked so small. Lost. Mom, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a step toward him, but before I could reach him, my dad stood up. Emma, he said, his voice heavy. We need to talk. Froze. Dad. What's going on? He didn't answer. He just looked at James and Olivia, then back at me. And that's when I knew. I knew before anyone said a word. I could see it in the way Olivia wouldn't meet my eyes. In the way James was standing just a little too close to her. In the guilty looks on everyone's faces. But I needed to hear it. I needed someone to say it out loud. Will someone please tell me what's happening? I demanded, my voice shaking. My mom stood up, tears streaming down her face. Sweetheart, we didn't want you to find out like this. Find out what? That's when James finally spoke. Emma, he said, and his voice was calm. To come. I'm leaving you. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. What? I'm leaving you, he repeated. I'm in love with Olivia. We've been together for 6 months. I stared at him. At my husband of 11 years. The father of my child. And I couldn't breathe. 6 months. I whispered. He nodded. I didn't plan for it to happen. Just did. And I can't keep living a lie. I turned to Olivia. My baby sister. The girl I'd protected my whole life. The girl I would have died for. Livy, said my voice breaking. Is this true? She finally looked at me. And there were tears in her eyes too. But she didn't look sorry. She looked relieved. I love him, Emma, she said. I'm sorry, but I love him. And he loves me. The room started spinning. I grabbed onto the back of a chair to steady myself. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. But it was. It was all too real. I looked around the room at my family. At the people who were supposed to love me, support me, protect me. And they were all just standing there, watching. Like this was some kind of intervention. Wait, I said, my mind finally catching up. You all knew about this. No one answered. You all knew. I repeated louder this time. My mom stepped forward. Honey, we found out a few weeks ago. We didn't know how to tell you. We thought it would be better if we were all here. To support you. Support me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're standing in my living room with my husband and my sister, telling me they've been having an affair for 6 months. And you think you're supporting me? Emma, please calm down, my dad said. Don't tell me to calm down. I was shaking now. My whole body trembling with a combination of rage and heartbreak and disbelief. And then Noah spoke. My beautiful little boy. My reason for everything. He stood up from his corner and walked toward me. And I thought for a moment that he was going to hug me. That he was going to tell me everything would be okay. But instead, he stopped a few feet away and looked at me with eyes that seemed too old for his face. Mom, he said quietly. Your time is over. Dad is happier with Aunt Olivia now. Maybe you should just let him go. I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. My own son, my baby, taking their side. Couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there for another second. Without saying a word, I turned around, walked out the front door and kept walking. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't care. I just needed to get away. Away from the betrayal. Away from the lies. Away from the people who were supposed to love me but had just ripped my entire world apart. I walked for what felt like hours. Through neighborhoods I didn't recognize. Past houses full of families who probably had no idea how lucky they were. Eventually, I ended up at a small park. It was empty. Just a few swings and a bench under a flickering streetlight. I sat down on the bench and finally let myself cry. I cried for my marriage. For my sister. For my son who had looked at me like I was the villain in his story. I cried until I had nothing left. And then, somewhere around midnight, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. I wasn't going to be the victim in this story. I was going to fight. I didn't know how yet. But I knew one thing for certain. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I was just going to walk away and let them have their happily ever after. But they were wrong. They were so wrong. I pulled out my phone and saw that I had 118 missed calls. From James. From Olivia. From my parents. From everyone. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, I opened my contacts and scrolled until I found a name I hadn't thought about in years. William Chin. My old friend from college. Now one of the best divorce attorneys in the state. Hit call. He answered on the second ring. Emma. Is everything okay? It's midnight. I took a deep breath and felt something shift inside me. The sadness was still there, but it was making room for something else now. Determination. Will, I said, my voice steady for the first time all night. I need your help. And by the time I'm done, they're all gonna wish they never crossed me. William didn't hesitate. Not even for a second. Tell me everything, he said. And I could hear him moving around, probably getting out of bed, grabbing a notepad. That was Will. Always ready. Always reliable. We'd met freshman year of college. He was pre-law, I was accounting, and we ended up in the same study group for a statistics class neither of us wanted to take. We became fast friends. The kind of friends who could talk for hours about nothing and everything. But life happened. Met James. Will moved to Columbus for law school. We lost touch the way people do. I'd see his updates on social media sometimes. Saw when he got married, then divorced, then built one of the most successful family law practices in Ohio. I never thought I'd need his services. Funny how life works. I sat on that park bench until almost 2 in the morning, telling Will everything. The affair. The ambush at my house. The way my own son had looked at me like I was the problem. Will listened without interrupting. And when I was done, he let out a long breath. Emma, he said quietly. I'm so sorry. This is brutal. Yeah, I whispered. It is. But here's what I need you to understand. You're not powerless here. Not even close. You've got options. A lot of them. Like what? Well, for starters, you're the primary breadwinner, right? You said you just got promoted to SVP. Yeah. James makes decent money at the dealership, but I make almost 3 times what he does. And the house. It's in both our names. But I've been paying the mortgage for the last 5 years. James's income mostly covers his car, his hobbies, the fun stuff. Will made a sound that was almost like a laugh. Oh, Emma. He has no idea what's coming, does he? What do you mean? I mean, in Ohio, adultery doesn't directly affect divorce settlements, but it absolutely affects custody. Especially when the affair involves a close family member. And especially when there's evidence that the cheating spouse and the affair partner have been manipulating the child. Thought about Noah. About the way he'd spoken to me. Those words hadn't come from him. They couldn't have. My sweet boy, who used to crawl into my lap and tell me I was the best mom in the world. Someone had coached him. Someone had turned him against me. And I had a pretty good idea who. What do I do now? Yes. First, you need somewhere safe to stay tonight. Do you have anywhere you can go? Someone who isn't involved in this mess. Thought for a moment. My best friend from work, Sarah, lived about 20 minutes away. She'd offered me her guest room 100 times whenever I complained about being tired from travel. Yeah, I said. I think so. Good. Go there. Get some sleep. And tomorrow morning I want you in my office at 9 sharp. We're gonna start building your case. Will, thank you. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. You don't have to repay me, Emma. That's what friends are for. Now go get some rest. You're gonna need it. I hung up and sat there for another moment staring at my phone. 118 missed calls had become 134. Texts were pouring in too. From James. Emma, please come home. Let's talk about this like adults. From Olivia. Em, I know you're hurt, but please let me explain. I never meant for this to happen. From my mom. Sweetheart, please call us. We're worried about you. I read each one feeling nothing. Just pity. Then I deleted them all. I called an Uber and gave them Sarah's address. 20 minutes later, I was standing on her doorstep, mascara streaked down my face, still wearing my business suit from the conference. Sarah opened the door in her pajamas, took one look at me, and pulled me into the tightest hug I'd ever received. Oh, honey, she said. Oh no. What happened? I couldn't even get the words out. I just cried into her shoulder until she guided me inside, sat me down on her couch, and wrapped a blanket around me. "You don't have to talk," she said gently. "Not tonight. Tonight you just rest. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out tomorrow." I nodded, too exhausted to argue. She set me up in her guest room with a glass of water and some tissues. And even though I was sure I'd never be able to sleep, the moment my head hit the pillow, I was out. I dreamed of Noah. Of the day he was born. Of holding him in my arms for the first time. His tiny fingers wrapping around mine. Of the way he used to look at me like I was his whole world. I woke up with tears on my pillow. But I also woke up with something else. Purpose. It was 7 in the morning. I had 2 hours before my meeting with Will. I got up, took a shower, borrowed some clothes from Sarah, and tried to make myself look like a functioning human being. Sarah was already in the kitchen making coffee when I came downstairs. "You want to talk about it now?" she asked carefully. I sat down at her kitchen table and told her everything. By the time I was done, Sarah's face had gone through about 15 different expressions. Anger. Disbelief. More anger. "Your sister," she practically shouted. "Your own sister." "Yep. And your family knew. And they just staged an intervention. Like you were the problem." "That's exactly what they did." Sarah slammed her coffee mug down on the counter. "Emma, I've known you for 8 years. You are the most loyal, hard-working, decent person I've ever met. And they did this to you. All of them. All of them. What about Noah? What's going on with him?" I felt my throat tighten. "He told me my time was over. That James was happier with Olivia." Sarah's eyes went wide. "A 9-year-old said that. Those aren't his words, Emma. Someone put those words in his mouth." "I know. That's parental alienation. That's illegal." "I know that too. Will's gonna help me figure it out." Sarah walked over and sat down across from me. She took my hands in hers. "Listen to me," she said firmly. "You are going to get through this. You are going to come out the other side stronger than ever. And those people, they're gonna regret the day they ever thought they could do this to you." I squeezed her hands. "Thank you, Sarah. For everything. That's what real friends are for," she said. "Now finish your coffee. You've got a divorce attorney to meet." Will's office was in a sleek building downtown. The kind of place with marble floors and receptionists who look like they just stepped out of a magazine. But Will himself hadn't changed a bit. Same warm smile. Same kind eyes behind those wire-rimmed glasses. He met me in the lobby and gave me a hug that felt like coming home. "How you holding up?" he asked. "I'm standing," I said. "That's gotta count for something." "It counts for a lot. Come on, let's get to work." We went up to his office, which had a gorgeous view of the city. He had coffee and pastries waiting, and I realized I hadn't eaten since yesterday afternoon. "Before we start," Will said, "I need you to understand something. This is gonna be hard. Really hard. There are gonna be moments where you want to give up. Where the fight feels like it's not worth it." "I'm not giving up," I said firmly. "Good. Because here's what we're working with." He pulled out a legal pad covered in notes. "You're the primary earner. You've been paying the mortgage. You have a stable career, a clean record, and no history of any kind of instability. And James. James has a job, but it's commission-based. Inconsistent income. And now he's involved with your sister, which creates a complicated family dynamic that any judge is gonna look at sideways. What about custody?" Will leaned back in his chair. "That's where it gets interesting. Based on what you told me last night, there's strong evidence of parental alienation. Someone has been coaching Noah. Turning him against you. Can we prove that?" "We can try. I'm gonna recommend a child psychologist, someone who specializes in these cases. They'll evaluate Noah, talk to him, figure out what's really going on. And if they determine that James and Olivia have been manipulating him, then what? Then we have a very strong case for primary custody. Maybe even supervised visitation for James." I felt a spark of hope for the first time since this nightmare began. There's something else, Will said. You mentioned that your family was there. That they all knew about the affair and chose to confront you together. Yeah. It was like they'd planned it. That's important. Because it shows a pattern of coordinated behavior. They weren't trying to help you. They were trying to manage you. Control the narrative. What does that mean for the case? It means we document everything. Every interaction. Every text. Every email. If they try to paint you as the unstable one, we need evidence that shows the truth. I nodded, taking it all in. Now, Will said, leaning forward, I need to ask you something important. What do you want out of this? Not what you think you should want. What do you actually want? I thought about it for a long moment. I want my son back, I said finally. I want him to know the truth. I want him to understand that I never stopped loving him. Not for 1 second. Okay. What else? I want James to face consequences. I want him to understand that he can't just throw away 11 years of marriage like it's nothing. And Olivia. That one was harder. Olivia was my sister. My blood. The girl I'd grown up with, protected, loved unconditionally. But she'd betrayed me in the worst possible way. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to never see her again. Part of me wants to understand why she did this. Both of those feelings are valid, Will said. And you don't have to decide anything about Olivia right now. Right now, we focus on the divorce and custody. Okay. One more thing. I need you to stay strong. James is gonna try to contact you. He's gonna say all the right things, try to get you to agree to a quick, quiet divorce. Do not engage with him directly. Everything goes through me. Got it. And your family might try to reach out too. They might try to guilt you into reconciliation. Into keeping quiet for the sake of peace. They can try. Will smiled. There's the Emma I remember. We spent the next 3 hours going over strategy. Will explained the divorce process in Ohio, the timeline, the potential complications. He gave me a list of things I needed to gather. Financial records, bank statements, text messages, anything that documented the timeline of the affair. By the time I left his office, my head was spinning. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Control. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I felt like I was in control of my own story. I went back to Sarah's house and started organizing everything. She helped me create a folder, both physical and digital, where I stored every piece of evidence I could find. And there was more evidence than I expected. See, James wasn't exactly careful. I'd always had access to our shared accounts, our cloud storage, our phone plan. And when I started digging, I found things that made my stomach turn. Text messages between James and Olivia going back almost 8 months. Not 6 like he'd said. Photos of them together. At restaurants. The beach. At what looked like a hotel room. And emails. Emails discussing their future. How they'd handle the divorce. How they'd manage Noah. How they'd deal with me. One email in particular stood out. It was from Olivia to James, dated 3 weeks before the confrontation. I talked to Mom and Dad, she'd written. They're on board. They agree that Emma's working too much and not giving you the attention you deserve. They'll support us when we tell her. Don't worry, babe. We've got this. I stared at that email for a long time. My own parents. Bored. Supporting my sister's affair with my husband. 'Cause I was working too much. Because I was providing for my family, building a career, trying to give Noah the best life possible. That was my crime. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to drive to my parents' house and demand answers. But I didn't. Instead, I saved the email, added it to the folder, and kept going. Over the next few days, I collected everything. Will reviewed it all and said we had more than enough to build a strong case. But James wasn't making things easy. He'd called me 47 times since that first night. Left voicemails ranging from apologetic to angry to pleading. Each one made me feel sick. Emma, please. Let's talk about this. We can work something out. Emma, you're being unreasonable. You can't just disappear. You have a son. Emma, I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry it happened this way. But you have to understand, Olivia and I. It's real. It's not just some fling. I saved every voicemail. More evidence. Olivia tried to. She sent long texts about how she never meant to hurt me, how she tried to fight her feelings but couldn't, how she hoped we could eventually be sisters again. I didn't respond to any of them. My mom called every day, crying, begging me to come home so we could talk as a family. Please, sweetheart. We love you. We're just trying to help everyone find happiness. Help everyone find happiness. Like my happiness didn't matter. I didn't respond to her either. The only person I desperately wanted to talk to was Noah. My beautiful boy. My reason for getting up every morning. I called the house phone several times, hoping he'd answer. But it always went to voicemail or James would pick up and I'd hang up. Finally, on the 5th day I got lucky. Hello. Noah's voice. Small and uncertain. Noah. Baby, it's Mom. Silence. Noah, are you there? Mom. His voice was barely a whisper. Dad said I shouldn't talk to you. My heart cracked. Why, sweetheart? Why would he say that? He said you're gonna try to take me away. That you don't really love me. That you only care about your job. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears. Noah, listen to me. That's not true. None of that is true. I love you more than anything in this whole world. Do you understand? More than anything. Then why did you leave? I didn't leave you, baby. I would never leave you. I just needed some time to figure things out. But I'm coming back for you. I promise. I heard voices in the background. James's voice. Then the line went dead. I sat there, phone in hand, tears streaming down my face. They were turning my son against me. Filling his head with lies. And I wasn't gonna let them get away with it. I called Will immediately. We need to move faster, I said. They're poisoning Noah against me. I need to see my son. I understand, Will said. I'll file for emergency custody tomorrow. And I've got the child psychologist lined up. Her name is Dr. Rebecca Torres. She's the best in the state. How soon can she see Noah? That depends on the court. But given what you've just told me, I think we can make a strong case for urgency. Do it. Do whatever you have to do. Emma, I need you to stay calm. I know this is hard. But if you show up at that house demanding to see Noah, it could hurt our case. I know. No. I miss him so much. I know you do. And we're gonna get him back. I promise. I hung up and tried to believe him. But that night, lying in Sarah's guest room, all I could think about was Noah's voice. Dad said I shouldn't talk to you. Those words haunted me. My own son. Being told not to talk to his mother. I made a vow right then and there. No matter what it took. No matter how hard this fight got. I was gonna win. And when I did, everyone who had betrayed me was gonna understand exactly what they'd lost. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. Will filed for emergency custody, but the court system doesn't move as fast as you want it to when your heart is breaking. There were motions to file, hearings to schedule, paperwork that seemed to multiply every single day. Meanwhile, I was stuck in limbo, living at Sarah's house, going to work and pretending everything was fine, crying myself to sleep every night. But I didn't give up. Not once. Every morning I woke up and reminded myself why I was fighting. Noah's face. His laugh. The way he used to run into my arms when I came home from work. That was worth fighting for. That was worth everything. Will kept me updated on every development. James had hired his own attorney, some guy named Richard Brennan who had a reputation for playing dirty. Apparently, they were planning to argue that I had abandoned the family. That I was an absent mother. That James was the more stable parent. They're gonna try to use your work travel against you, Will warned me during one of our meetings. They'll say you prioritized your career over your family. That's ridiculous. I traveled for work to provide for my family. James knew that. He supported it. I know. And we'll make that clear. But you need to be prepared for them to twist everything. I was prepared. More than they knew. Because I had something they didn't expect. About a week after the initial filing, I got a call from an unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it, but something told me to answer. Hello. Is this Emma Collins? Yes. Who's this? My name is David. David Mitchell. I work with James at the dealership. I sat up straighter. Okay. What can I do for you, David? There was a pause. Then he spoke again, his voice lower. Look, I don't know if I should be calling you, but I've been watching what's happening and I think you deserve to know some things. My heart started racing. What kind of things? Can we meet somewhere? In person. I don't want to do this over the phone. I hesitated. For all I knew, this was some kind of trap. James trying to catch me doing something wrong. But something in David's voice seemed genuine. Nervous but honest. Okay, I said. Where? We agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown the next morning. I told Will about it, and he said to be careful but that it could be useful. If this guy has information that helps our case, we need to hear it, Will said. Just don't make any promises. Don't agree to anything. Just listen. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early. I wanted to scope out the place, make sure it felt safe. David showed up right on time. He was younger than I expected. Maybe late 20s. Nervous energy. He kept looking around like he was afraid someone would see him. Thank you for meeting me, he said as he sat down across from me. You said you had information about James. Yeah. Look, I've worked at the dealership for 3 years. James is my manager. And for most of that time he seemed like a decent guy. But lately. Lately what? David took a deep breath. About 8 months ago things started changing. He started coming into work late. Taking long lunches. Leaving early. First I didn't think much of it. But then I started noticing other things. Like what? Like the way he talked about you. It was never direct, you know. But he'd make little comments. About how you were never home. How you cared more about your job than your family. How he felt like a single dad. I felt my jaw tighten. Go on. Then your sister started showing up. Olivia. She'd come by the dealership to bring him lunch. They'd disappear together for hours. Everyone knew something was going on, but nobody said anything because James is the boss. Did you ever confront him about it? David shook his head. I wanted to. But I need this job. I got a kid of my own. I couldn't risk it. I understood that. Even if it hurt. So why are you telling me now? David looked down at his coffee. Because of what happened last week. James came into the office bragging about how he was going to take you for everything. How his lawyer was going to destroy you in court. How you'd be lucky to get supervised visits with your kid. My blood ran cold. He said that. Word for word. He was laughing about it. Like it was some kind of game. David finally met my eyes. I've got a daughter, Mrs. Collins. She's 4 years old. And the thought of someone keeping her away from her mom like that. It made me sick. I didn't know what to say. This stranger, this guy I'd never met before, was showing me more compassion than my own family. Thank you, David, I said quietly. This means a lot. There's more. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. I probably shouldn't have this. But James keeps files on his work computer. Personal stuff. I may have copied some of it. My eyes went wide. What's on there? Emails. Photos. Some financial stuff that didn't look right. I don't know if it'll help, but I figured you should have it. I took the flash drive, my hands trembling. David, you could get in serious trouble for this. I know. But some things are more important than playing it safe. He stood up to leave. Good luck, Mrs. Collins. I hope you get your son back. And then he was gone. I sat there for a long time staring at that flash drive. Then I called Will. You need to see this, I said. Right now. An hour later we were in Will's office, going through the files on David's flash drive. And what we found changed everything. There were emails. Hundreds of them. Between James and Olivia. going back even further than I'd thought. Almost a full year. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the financial documents. See, about 2 years ago, James and I had started a joint investment account. We'd put in about $50,000, planning to save for Noah's college fund. According to these documents, James had been draining that account for months, transferring money to a private account I didn't know existed, an account that also had Olivia's name on it. "He's been stealing from you," Will said, his voice tight with anger. "For months. Right under your nose." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "How much?" Will did the math. "Almost $40,000. He left just enough in the joint account that you wouldn't notice on the statements. $40,000. Money I'd worked for. Money meant for my son's future. This is fraud," Will said. "This is theft. This changes everything, Emma." "What do you mean?" "I mean, we're not just fighting for custody anymore. We're fighting for your financial security. And James just handed us the ammunition we need to bury him." Over the next few days, Will worked his magic. He filed additional motions with the court, presenting evidence of James's financial misconduct. He also submitted the evidence of parental alienation, including recordings of my phone calls with Noah and expert testimony from Dr. Torres, the child psychologist. Dr. Torres had finally gotten to evaluate Noah. She spent 3 hours with him over 2 sessions. Her report was devastating. "Noah displays clear signs of parental alienation syndrome," she wrote. "He has been systematically coached to reject his mother and align with his father and the father's romantic partner. His statements about his mother are inconsistent with his emotional responses, suggesting that his negative opinions have been externally influenced rather than organically developed. In other words, my son still loved me. Deep down, he still loved me. But James and Olivia had worked hard to bury that love under layers of lies and manipulation." When I read that report, I cried. But for the first time in weeks, they were tears of hope. My boy was still in there. And I was gonna get him back. The court date for the emergency custody hearing was set for a Thursday morning. I barely slept the night before. Sarah drove me to the courthouse. She held my hand the whole way. "You've got this," she said. "You've worked so hard. You've stayed strong. Today is your day." I wanted to believe her. Inside the courthouse, I saw James for the first time since that horrible night. He looked different, smaller somehow. Like the confident man I'd married had been replaced by someone uncertain, nervous. Olivia wasn't with him. I found out later that his attorney had advised her to stay away. Having her there would have made James look bad. Smart move. Too late, but smart. My parents were there, though. Sitting in the gallery. My mom tried to catch my eye, but I looked right through her. I had nothing to say to them. Not anymore. The hearing lasted almost 4 hours. Will presented our case methodically. The affair. The financial fraud. The parental alienation. Each piece of evidence was more damaging than the last. James's attorney tried to fight back. He argued that I had been an absent mother, that I had abandoned the family home, that James was the more stable parent. But every argument fell flat. When it was my turn to testify, I told the truth. All of it. I talked about my marriage. About how I'd worked hard to provide for my family while James complained and pulled away. About how I'd trusted my sister, loved her unconditionally, only to be betrayed in the worst possible way. And I talked about Noah. "He's my whole world," I said, my voice cracking. "Everything I've ever done has been for him. And the thought that someone has been poisoning his mind against me. It breaks my heart." I looked directly at James when I said it. He couldn't meet my eyes. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Reynolds, listened to everything carefully. She asked pointed questions. She reviewed the evidence. And then she made her ruling. "Based on the evidence presented," Judge Reynolds said, "this court finds that there is substantial evidence of parental alienation and financial misconduct on the part of Mr. Collins." I held my breath. Effective immediately, primary physical custody of the minor child, Noah Collins, is awarded to the mother, Emma Collins. Gasp. My hand flew to my mouth. The father, James Collins, will be granted supervised visitation twice per week, pending completion of a parenting course and counseling. Additionally, Mr. Collins is ordered to repay the funds improperly transferred from the joint account, plus interest. Will squeezed my shoulder. Sarah was crying in the gallery. I had won. I had actually won. But the best part came next. Furthermore, Judge Reynolds continued, this court is deeply troubled by the conduct of Mr. Collins and his partner. The systematic manipulation of a child is a serious matter. I strongly encourage the parties to consider the long-term psychological impact of their actions. She looked directly at James. Mr. Collins, your son is not a pawn. He is a child who needs both of his parents to act like adults. I hope you'll remember that going forward. James said nothing. He just stared at the table in front of him, his face pale. Court was adjourned. I walked out of that courthouse feeling like a different person. For weeks I'd been drowning, fighting just to keep my head above water. And now, finally, I could breathe. But there was still one thing I needed to do. I needed to see my son. Will had arranged for the custody transfer to happen that same afternoon. I drove to the house, my house, with a police officer as escort just in case James tried anything. But when I pulled up, there was no confrontation. James was standing on the porch, alone. He looked defeated. And beside him, holding a small backpack, was Noah. My beautiful, beautiful boy. The moment he saw me, something changed in his face. The walls that had been built up over the past months seemed to crack. Mom, he said, his voice small and uncertain. I knelt down and opened my arms. I'm here, baby. I'm right here. For a moment he didn't move. And I thought maybe the damage was too deep. Maybe he'd been too thoroughly convinced that I was the enemy. But then he ran. He ran straight into my arms and held on like he was never gonna let go. I'm sorry, Mom. He sobbed into my shoulder. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean what I said. I held him tight, tears streaming down my face. It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. None of this was your fault. Love you. I love you so much. We stayed like that for what felt like forever. And in that moment nothing else mattered. Not the betrayal. Not the lies. Not the months of pain. Had my son back. That was everything. As I loaded Noah into the car, I glanced back at James. He was still standing on the porch, watching us. For a second I almost felt sorry for him. He'd thrown away everything. His marriage. His family. His integrity. And for what? For my sister. But then I remembered the emails. The stolen money. The way he'd tried to turn my own child against me. And the sympathy disappeared. Goodbye, James, I said quietly. He didn't respond. I got in the car and drove away. And I didn't look back. That night, Noah and I stayed at Sarah's house. We ordered pizza and watched his favorite movie. Felt almost normal. Almost. Before bed, Noah came into my room. He stood in the doorway, looking nervous. Mom, can I sleep in here tonight? Of course, baby. Come here. He climbed into bed next to me and curled up against my side. Mom, he said after a few minutes of silence. Yeah. Is Dad a bad person? I thought carefully about how to answer. Your dad made some bad choices, I said finally. He hurt people. He hurt me. But that doesn't mean he's all bad. People are complicated. Do you still love him? That was harder. I loved the person I thought he was, I said honestly. But the person he showed me these past months, I don't love that person. Noah was quiet for a while. I think I understand, he said finally. And Noah, no matter what happens, no matter what anyone tells you, I will always, always love you. Nothing can ever change that. Okay. He nodded against my chest. Okay, Mom. Within minutes he was asleep. I lay there in the darkness, holding my son, feeling more at peace than I had in months. The road ahead was still gonna be hard. There was the divorce to finalize. the financial mess to sort out, the complicated question of what to do about my family. But for the first time I knew I could handle it. Because I wasn't alone anymore. I had my son. I had friends who loved me. And I had myself. That was enough. That was more than enough. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. Noah and I moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, just a cozy 2-bedroom place in a nice neighborhood with good schools. It was a fresh start. Clean slate. Every morning, I'd wake up and see Noah's bedroom door across the hall, and I'd feel this overwhelming sense of gratitude. He was here. He was safe. He was mine. The custody arrangement was working out better than I'd hoped. James got his supervised visits twice a week, and to his credit, he seemed to be taking the court's orders seriously. He'd enrolled in the parenting course, started seeing a therapist, even apologized to Noah for putting him in the middle of everything. I didn't trust him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I was willing to let him try to be a better father. For Noah's sake. As for Olivia, that was more complicated. She tried to reach out several times since the court hearing. Text, voicemails, even a handwritten letter that showed up at Sarah's house before I moved. I read the letter once. Emma, I know I can never undo what I did. I know I destroyed our relationship, and I'll have to live with that guilt for the rest of my life. But I want you to know that I'm truly sorry. I was selfish. I was wrong. And I lost the most important person in my life because of it. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope someday you'll understand that I never stopped loving you, even when I was hurting you. Your sister, Olivia. I sat with those words for a long time. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone and scream at her. Part of me wanted to pretend she didn't exist. But mostly I just felt tired. Tired of the anger. Tired of the hurt. Tired of carrying this weight around. So I made a decision. I wasn't gonna forgive Olivia. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I was gonna let go of the hatred. For my own sake. For Noah's sake. Holding on to that poison was only hurting me. And I'd been hurt enough. I wrote her back. One sentence. I'm not ready to talk. But I hope you find peace. And that was it. Maybe someday we'd have a real conversation. Maybe someday I'd be able to look at her without feeling that knife twist in my gut. But that day wasn't today. And that was okay. My parents were a different story. They tried to reach out too. My mom called almost every day for the first 2 weeks. My dad sent a long email about how they'd made a mistake, how they should have handled things differently, how they hoped I could find it in my heart to forgive them. But here's the thing about forgiveness. It's not something you can demand. It's not something you can schedule. It happens when it happens, and sometimes it doesn't happen at all. My parents had stood in my living room and watched as my husband and sister announced their affair. They'd known for weeks. They'd helped plan that ambush. They'd chosen Olivia's happiness over mine. That wasn't something I could just get over. So I set boundaries. I told them through Will that I needed space. That I wasn't ready to see them or talk to them. That if they wanted any relationship with me or Noah in the future, they needed to respect that. To my surprise, they listened. The calls stopped. The emails stopped. They gave me the space I asked for. And slowly, very slowly, the anger started to fade. Not disappear. Fade. There's a difference. About 2 months after the custody hearing, something unexpected happened. I was at work, buried in spreadsheets, when my assistant knocked on my door. Emma, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is David Mitchell. My heart skipped. David. The guy from the dealership who'd given me the flash drive. Send him in. David walked in looking nervous, just like the first time we'd met. But there was something different about him too. A lightness that hadn't been there before. Hey, he said. Sorry to just show up like this. I hope I'm not interrupting. No, it's fine. Please sit down. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. What's going on? He sat, fidgeting with his hands. I heard about the court ruling. About how you got custody of your son. Word travels fast. Small world. He smiled slightly. Anyway, I just wanted to say congratulations. And also, I quit. You quit the dealership. Yeah. After everything that happened, I couldn't keep working there. Knowing what I knew about James. Knowing what kind of person he really was. I shrugged. So I found a new job. Better pay, better hours, better people. That's great, David. I'm really happy for you. Thanks. But that's not the only reason I came. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. I found something else. After you left that day, I kept digging. I know I shouldn't have, but I couldn't help it. He handed me the envelope. What is this? Open it. I did. Inside were printed copies of bank statements, transfers, receipts. I don't understand, I said, scanning the documents. What am I looking at? James wasn't just stealing from your joint account. He was also skimming money from the dealership. For years. I found records going back almost 3 years. My jaw dropped. He was embezzling. Looks like it. I gave copies to the dealership's owner last week. They're pressing charges. I sat back in my chair, stunned. James wasn't just a cheater. He was a thief. Criminal. And now he was gonna face real consequences. David. Why did you do all this? You barely know me. He was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at me with those earnest eyes. Because it was the right thing to do. And because. He hesitated. Because you remind me of my mom. Your mom. She went through something similar when I was a kid. My dad cheated on her. Left her for someone else. And she didn't have anyone to help her fight back. She lost everything. His voice got thick. I always wished someone had been there for her. So when I saw what was happening to you, I figured, maybe I could be that person. I didn't know what to say. This stranger, this kind, brave stranger, had risked his job, maybe even his safety, to help me. Thank you, David, I said softly. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. He smiled. You don't have to. Just be happy. That's enough. He stood up to leave, but at the door he paused. Hey, Emma. One more thing. Yeah. If you ever want to grab coffee sometime. You know, just as friends. I'd like that. I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Not romantic. Not yet. But something hopeful. I'd like that too, I said. He grinned and walked out. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like the future might actually be bright. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. It was surprisingly painless. James didn't fight anything. Probably because he had bigger problems to deal with. The embezzlement charges were moving forward. And his attorney had advised him to focus on that instead of trying to drag out the divorce. Got the house. Not that I wanted it anymore. Too many memories. I sold it and used the money to pay off debts and start a college fund for Noah. A real one this time. One that only I controlled. James got supervised visitation, which continued for another 6 months before he was allowed unsupervised time. By then, he'd completed his parenting course, finished therapy, and genuinely seemed to be trying to be a better person. I didn't forgive him, but I stopped hating him. For Noah's sake. Because here's the thing I learned through all of this. Hate is heavy. It weighs you down. And if you carry it too long, it becomes part of you. I didn't want that. I wanted to be light, free, happy. So I let it go. Not for James. Not for Olivia. Not for my parents. For me. About a year after everything fell apart, something amazing happened. My mom called. I almost didn't answer. But something told me to pick up. Emma. Her voice was shaky. Nervous. Please don't hang up. I'm listening. I know I don't deserve your time. I know I failed you in the worst possible way. But I need you to know something. What? Your father and I. We made a terrible mistake. We got caught up in Olivia's drama, her tears, her promises that this was true love. And we forgot the most important thing. What's that? That you're our daughter too. That you deserved our loyalty. Our protection. Our love. She was crying now. I'm so sorry, Emma. I'm so sorry. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, tears streaming down my face. Mom! I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for anything. I just needed you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. For a long moment I couldn't speak. Then finally I said the words I never thought I'd say. I'm not ready to forgive you yet. But I'm willing to try. My mom sobbed with relief. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. That's all I needed to hear. We talked for almost an hour that night. Really talked. About everything that had happened. About her mistakes. About my pain. About the long road ahead. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. But it was a start. And sometimes a start is all you need. Over the next few months, things slowly got better. I started seeing David for coffee. Then dinner. Then movies. He was kind and patient and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. One night, about 8 months after our first coffee date, he looked at me across the table and said something that made my heart stop. Emma, I know you've been through hell. And I know you're scared to trust again. But I want you to know something. What? I'm not going anywhere. No matter how long it takes. No matter how slow we have to go. I'm here. For you. For Noah. For whatever future we might have together. I looked at this man, this wonderful, unexpected man who had come into my life like a gift I never knew I needed. And I smiled. I'm here too, David. I'm here too. He reached across the table and took my hand. And in that moment I knew. I knew that everything I'd been through, all the pain, all the betrayal, all the heartbreak had led me to this. To a second chance. To real love. To happiness. 2 years later, David and I got married. It was a small ceremony. Just close friends, Noah, and yes, my parents. We held it in a beautiful garden outside of Cleveland, with flowers everywhere and the sun shining down like the universe itself was celebrating with us. Noah was the ring bearer. He walked down the aisle with the biggest grin on his face, and I swear my heart nearly exploded with joy. When David and I exchanged vows, I looked out at the people who loved me, really loved me, and I felt complete. I spent a long time believing that my story was over, I said, tears in my eyes. That the betrayal I experienced had broken me beyond repair. But then I realized something. That wasn't my ending. It was just a chapter. Painful, terrible chapter. But not the end. I looked at David. You showed me that I could trust again. That I could love again. That I deserved happiness. And I will spend the rest of my life being grateful for you. David's eyes were wet too. Emma, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You took the worst thing that could happen to someone and turned it into something beautiful. I'm not just lucky to be your husband. I'm honored. We kissed and everyone cheered. And as I stood there, surrounded by love and light and hope, I thought about everything that had led to this moment. The betrayal. Pain. The fight for my son. The long road to healing. It had all been worth it. Every single moment. 'Cause it brought me here. To this beautiful life. To this incredible man. To a future I never could have imagined. That night, after the reception, Noah came up to me and hugged me tight. Mom, he said. Yeah, baby. I'm really happy. I held him close, breathing in the scent of his hair, feeling his heart beat against mine. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. And I meant it. For the first time in years I was truly, completely, overwhelmingly happy. So if you're out there going through something hard, something that feels impossible, I want you to know this. Gets better. I know it doesn't feel like it right now. I know the pain seems endless. I know you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. But it's there. Promise you it's there. Keep fighting. Keep believing. Keep holding on. Because your story isn't over. The best chapter might be just around the corner. Mine was. And now, every single day, I wake up next to the love of my life. I see my son thriving and happy. And I know that everything I went through made me stronger. Made me wiser. Made me who I was always meant to be. James. Last I heard, he served 6 months for the embezzlement charges. He and Olivia broke up shortly after. Turns out their relationship couldn't survive without the thrill of being forbidden. Olivia and I still don't talk much. But we've exchanged a few civil messages. She's in therapy, working on herself. Maybe someday we'll find our way back to each other. Maybe not. Either way, I'm at peace with it. My parents and I have rebuilt our relationship. It's different than before. More honest, more careful. But it's real. And that's all that matters. So that's my story. The story of how I walked into my house one day and had my whole world ripped apart. And how I put it back together, piece by piece, day by day, until it was even better than before. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. And remember, no matter how dark things get, no matter how broken you feel, you have the power to write your own ending. Make it a happy one. You deserve it. I know I did. And now, every night before I fall asleep, I look at my husband David, I think about my beautiful son Noah, and I smile. Because this is my happily ever after. And it was worth every tear, every fight, every moment of doubt. It was worth everything. The end.